Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is LeeAnn Ducat, and I'm here with attorney Kevin Barry. We are here to discuss this evening the lawsuit update for the religious exemption lawsuit here in the state of Connecticut. For those who are new to the issue, I'll just give you a very quick background. I started a group called Informed Choice Connecticut a few years ago. We fought the removal of the religious exemption here in Connecticut, but little did we know at that time that our state had fallen to regulatory capture and participation in the legislature is pointless and a waste of time. So our last bastion of hope is here in the courts and the judicial system here in Connecticut. And we've assembled a stellar team of brilliant attorneys who are the only attorneys in the country who have survived a motion to dismiss on this issue. I have one of them here this evening, and we are going to give a special update about where the lawsuit is right now in its stages of progression. And we are also going to discuss a very special announcement at the end, and we'll take a few questions from the audience. I will let everybody know that we will not be answering strategic questions this evening. We're not going to show our whole hand to the public. We will answer some basic questions as best we can, but please forgive us. We will not be sharing very intimate details about this case. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce attorney Kevin Barry, and he will give us an update of what happened, when we filed, what's happened since, where we are now, where we look to go forward in the future. So, Kevin, if you could please take it away, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks, LeeAnn. And so Connecticut is a unique state of the 4 states that have had religious exemptions removed. New York, California, Maine, and Connecticut. Connecticut's the only one that has a statute called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I'll get into that in a minute about what that means. But the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, there's 21 states that have them. Connecticut's the first state to pass it. And it's a statute that just provides a legal standard, the highest legal standard, which is called strict scrutiny, for any law that puts a burden on free exercise of religion. So the religious exemption repeal in Connecticut certainly is a burden on a religious right, which means that the highest standard applies, which puts the burden on the state to show they have a compelling state interest in their policy, and that the policy that they've chosen, which burdens religion, is narrowly tailored to achieve that policy goal. We don't think the state can do either of those things, which is one of the reasons we're looking forward to getting to trial or getting to a preliminary injunction phase first, so that we can get these children, the kindergartners and preschoolers who've been excluded from school over the last year, if they weren't grandfathered in, and they can go back to school and have the same rights as non-religious people. Like it should be. And the best is, and I can't get into too much of the detail strategically about how we're going to approach this in court, but some very basic things. If you're trying to create this like imaginary vaccine-induced immunity bubble around a school, grandfathering in all kids from like kindergarten through 12th grade, and then not letting the new kids in, with exemptions, and they're all sharing the same cafeteria, same schoolyard, same hallways, same bathrooms. That how that's furthering a compelling state interest and how that's narrowly tailored to achieve that goal will be a challenge for the state to prove in court should we get to court. So what the state's been doing, and it's a standard thing when you sue a state. The first thing that anyone does is they file a motion to dismiss to try to get your case out. We defeated the state's motion to dismiss in Stamford court. And that's where we are now, that the state appealed it to the Supreme Court of Connecticut on subject matter jurisdiction grounds. And we...
Tell a little bit what that means.
Sure, I will, but I'm going to do the dates first. And we, this Friday, the 31st, we have to send our reply in. So we're in crunch time right now, up against the full power of the state and their farmer partners. So we could use as much financial help and otherwise. But on subject matter jurisdiction, the state has like 2 major issues that they're trying to argue in the Supreme Court. One, I think it's a real stretch. But one is that they're saying that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that statute that the state passed, that only applies to burdens of religion, they're saying that it doesn't apply to the legislature or legislation. That's one of their legal arguments. We think that's an enormous stretch. Like, what else? what else? What else is it there for? Unless it impacts what the future legislators do. Right? They're arguing that the 1993 law, the statute that's been there since 1993, doesn't apply to a law passed in 2021 because that's an earlier legislature binding a later legislature. We think that that's especially not true with a statute that is meant to protect against infringements of a right. So we are optimistic that we'll win that argument. We're also optimistic we'll win the other argument on subject matter jurisdiction. Is they're basically saying that this question has been asked and answered, and that it's like it's not a good use of the state's resources to continue arguing this case. You know, that other states have had religious exemptions taken away, and in other states, courts have not interceded to fix that. But the difference between this state and other states is it has a state Religious Freedom Restoration Act, right? So none of the other states, none of the other legal challenges, including the ones we brought in New York, that Jim Amigas and I brought in New York, we were dealing with the rational basis standard, the lowest standard of judicial review, not the highest standard, which we'll have in Connecticut.
Thank you for that explanation. Can you explain a little bit about the efforts that the state is using to allegedly make this a lot harder and cost a lot more money for the little guy, and how much they're throwing at us that is unnecessary?
Well, I think everything they're doing, whether it's intended to cause delay and slow things down, or that's just the nature of the judicial process. You know, that depends on how cynical you are, whether that's part of their strategy. You know, that's one of the issues that when it was being appealed, that our trial court judge, you know, did not. The standard would be that the state can't do this solely for delay, right? They can't appeal to the Supreme Court of the state if the only purpose is delay. So I don't think it was necessarily their only purpose. I think it's certainly a side effect that they welcome. And we're trying to go as fast as we can because we have actual real people, real 4- and 5-year-olds who are being kept out of school. And our clients' parents and a lot of parents in Connecticut are having the difficult dinner conversations, you know, when the 4-year-old asks you why the 6-year-old can go to school and the 4-year-old can't. That's a hard parent question, right?
Right.
It's because my state legislature's lost its mind is not a good answer, you know, or it's not an answer a 4-year-old can figure out. So what we're hoping, or this is what we're planning for success. We don't know how quickly the Supreme Court of Connecticut will rule, because we put our Friday is when we put ours in. They get I think the state gets 20 days to reply after that. That gets us towards the end of April. And then however much time it takes for the court to put out a written opinion. So what I envision will happen over the summer is that we'll have if we prevail at the Supreme Court in Connecticut, we'll have a preliminary injunction hearing in Stamford, back in our trial court in Stamford, and we'll for our clients and for our plaintiffs' children and all other children similarly situated in Connecticut, we'll seek a ruling to let them all go to school until we get the entire trial sorted out, because the state will likely continue to do things that have the effect of delaying. We're always stepping on the gas. They're always stepping on the brake.
Every single time.
Right.
Okay. So in a nutshell, We filed in Superior Court. We won at that level. The state appealed. We went to the appellate division. The appellate division decided to kick us to the the Supreme Court division, because they knew that we would both appeal to the Supreme Court if either one of us didn't have success in the appellate court division. Now we are preparing to submit our final brief to the Supreme Court this week. We've been working very diligently on it, and there are more than 3 attorneys. There's actually a couple additional attorneys that are on the team as well. We are Zooming all the time. We are researching all the time. We are trying our very hardest to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information and recent district court decisions, things like that, to stay abreast on. But it is requiring a huge time chunk from all of us, a lot of man hours. And so at this point, I feel like, should we just make our announcement now, Kevin, about?
Yeah, I'm just saying it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and we're up against, the biggest firms in Connecticut, in addition to the Attorney General's office, and in addition to, I think, states around the country are looking at this. Go ahead and make the announcement, and then we'll talk. Then I want to talk about how this is a nationally important case, and it fits into the announcement you're going to make, because other people are recognizing it's nationally important.
Yes, exactly. We have some friends in the community who do recognize the national importance of this case, because this is the only case like this in the entire country. Our friends over at Children's Health Defense have decided to offer us another matching donation. So they are willing to match donations up to $40,000 in the next month. So we're hoping that we can get the 40 grand donated by the general public, so that Children's Health Defense can then match those donations to us. That will help get us through this appellate brief and Supreme Court brief chunk of the lawsuit. Again, it is an extremely time-consuming effort. It is extremely important. We are making headway, and we do have a lot of arrows in our quiver. But it is, like I said, it is time-consuming, and there are a lot of people working on it. So we're looking for a little support for the Spillane families, so that we can get them and other families in Connecticut some justice and a little bit of relief. Kevin, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to add, and then I think we can take questions in the chat here. I don't know if people are allowed to ask questions in the chat, and I think there's other people trying to join.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is one of the other things they were saying, because there were other legal challenges in Connecticut that they're trying to say this question has been asked and answered by the Connecticut courts already, and that's not entirely accurate for a number of reasons. Our case is very different than the other case. The other case was in federal court. We're in state court. There are other ways to differentiate our case from theirs, and that'll all be in the paperwork that we file next week. Because and the one thing I want to say about, I would say the danger nationally to other states is the way Connecticut did it with grandfathering people in. But when they really weakened the parent army in Connecticut by doing that. And there's a lot of good people in the quote unquote movement, but there's a whole lot of people who had their own family situation taken care of, and they're like, it's not my fight anymore, right? But I hope the people around the country will see that the importance of if we win one back, if we claw back a religious exemption and get it put back on the books, that will be
when we do
nationally important. That'll also discourage farmers from trying to do it in other places, and then we can take this precedent to New York and Maine and California, and perhaps get it back there too, right? So, and it's really strange what's happened with religious freedom over the last 30 years, and this is and if there's one issue that should not be partisan, it's freedom of religion. It's the first thing in the First Amendment. And in 1993, the national RFRA was sponsored by then Congressman Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is the sponsor of the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It was signed by Bill Clinton. I think it passed the U.S. Senate like 98-2. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act in Connecticut was passed through the Assembly by current Speaker Ritter's father, who was also Speaker of the House in the 90s. And it passed 147-3 in Connecticut. So what's happened in the last 30 years, right? Like how is religious freedom something America has, or some parts of America has, relegated to a second class or third class right. So we are looking to reset the ship. And
That would be fantastic. I would just like to make a point to further something that you said, that a lot of people got comfortable when the grandfathering happened in Connecticut, and they did that almost strategically to cut the Army in half or even more, for people who just got complacent and comfortable again, thinking that their kids were safe. I urge you not to get comfortable with that, because that grandfathering can go away with a simple amendment on any bill in a legislative session. So if you think your kids are safe and you're not fighting, you're not contributing, you're not volunteering anymore, then I don't know what to say to you when the grandfathering goes on the chopping block, if it does before we get to see this case to fruition and its final adjudication. But I do have a great deal of hope and faith in the team that we've pulled together. Again, I want to reiterate, this is the only team in the whole country that has survived a motion to dismiss on this matter. And it's not by accident. These people are skilled. They have found serious legal standings that we can use as backing. They are extremely strategic. They have vested interest in the matter. They are well versed in the history of not only this issue, but the legislation that surrounds it. And I really think that it's important for people to understand how important it is to support this initiative, because it can not only set precedent here, but for other states as well. And it can also help the remaining 44 states that still have the religious exemption keep their exemptions when they start realizing that RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Acts, can protect you. There's a question coming in from the chat about, can they remove the Religious Freedom Restoration Act this session? There is no bills. The bill deadline to introduce bills this session is closed. There will be no new bills. Now, there could be amendments to bills. However, in order to do something like that, they would have to hear it as a vaccine bill. And they have already agreed in the Connecticut legislature this year that they will not be hearing any vaccine bills whatsoever. So it's a little bit of a relief. However, we can't get complacent, and we are still always watching. We are watching. We have, people searching. We have alerts set up, so we will know if something like that comes to the table. And if they were to do that, it would be a glaring, representation of how sneaky they're trying to be, and they're just trying to do that for their advantage.
Yeah, but that is something that's alive. That's a good question, and it's something that could happen in the future. And again, the eternal vigilance line, the price of liberty. I think that is. I think it's frequently attributed to Ben Franklin. I don't think it's him, but that is. You always have to keep an eye on what's happening there. And the one other thing I want to put out there, because the grandfathering, this has never been done before. It's all fresh snow. The way Connecticut did this. So if Connecticut decides to add COVID-19 to the schedule for K through 12, would that qualify for grandfathering, or would the grandfathering only be to the schedule as of April 27th, 2021, when the bill took effect? No one knows that. So here's another, because we don't know, right? So if Connecticut schools said, oh, grandfathering doesn't apply to things added to the schedule after the grandfathering, that could be a wake-up call to Connecticut people to why you might want to have your religious exemption back in play, right? Because it's not impossible that would happen. And the people who are vaccine zealots, why wouldn't they do everything they can to coerce school-age people to get the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, to quote unquote save lives? Right.
It's been a big crazy whirlwind. This bill passed in the middle of COVID. The bill was voted out of committee in 2020, right before the world shut down. And it actually got delayed a year in passing because they were going to do it in 2020. Then the legislature shut down. They ended up doing it in 2021. I just want to say, if anyone is listening live here in the studio, in the StreamYard studio, you can share this live right now to your groups and pages so that people can watch from your platforms, and you can help get the word out as well. If you have a moment, our producer is letting us know that right now. We had some technical difficulties this evening, so we weren't able to go live from the pages that we intended to. So we have this recording that we will be able to share. I do want to let everybody know that I did put some preferred ways to donate in the chat. If everybody wants to support the $40,000 matching donation, that would be really helpful. And if you want to share that with your friends, that would be extremely wonderful. Kevin, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. I don't see a lot of questions coming in through this chat because I think it's kind of limited to the people who jumped in on the StreamYard.
Yeah, the main thing I want to add is that this is going to be the trial of the century on this subject, right? It's never happened. No state, and we're going to pull out all the stops. We have great expert witnesses who will be on our side. We're working hard on bringing in some elite hired gun attorneys who might help us at the deposition phase. And I look forward to the leading lawyers and medical professionals on our side asking a state health employee to justify the hepatitis B shot and the chickenpox shot. That what's the compelling state interest, and how is it narrowly tailored? Because you haven't narrowly tailored your law to achieve your goal in any way. And I think it's going to really be impossible for the state to bring evidence in court, which is one of the reasons they're doing everything they can to try to stay out of court and win on technicalities. Because I think they know if they come to court, they're going to have a problem.
You're going to have a big problem. I did notice that there were, in our beginning hearings, there was a mention of discussing the merits of the case, which we all agreed in one of the earlier hearings that wasn't going to be an issue. And then the state tried to say that we didn't bother arguing the merits of the case, but we had all agreed that wasn't the time yet. And so they're pulling every manipulative stop that they can.
It's not time now either. It's not time with what we're doing at the Supreme Court. But they're doing everything they can to muddy it up, right, and slow it down. I think in the hopes of more and more people will leave the state. And I don't know why Connecticut wants people who, like families who tend to be religious, to leave the state. That doesn't make sense to me. Right. But New York and California did it too. So who knows what's going on in their heads? Right. But I think we again I think we're going to win at the Supreme Court on this, and we're going to get back to the trial. I think we have an excellent chance of getting the preliminary injunction before, so the kids can go to school in September 2023. And then as fast as we can get to court, we will get to court and hopefully win this thing. And the best data that we're going to have, and this isn't a surprise, and I'm not giving away too much strategy, but the best evidence that we are correct on this is the Connecticut Department of Health's data that show that religious exemptions and vaccine requirements for school can coexist without causing problems. There's no reason to infringe on the rights of the religious to have your public health goal. You can have both vaccine exemptions and vaccine requirements, and without causing a problem in your state.
They've coexisted peacefully for over 60 years in the state of Connecticut. If it's not broken, there was no reason to fix it. But we all know it wasn't in the best interest of public health that they did this. We know that our state has fallen to regulatory capture. So this was big industry that pushed for this bill to pass. We do have a question in the chat. What were the key dates? Someone missed that.
The key dates this week is Friday. Friday is our deadline to submit our brief to the Connecticut Supreme Court, and then they'll have a few weeks to respond to that. So the Connecticut Supreme Court by the end of April will have everything they need to go off in a corner and come out with their decision. And however long that takes the Supreme Court to do, as soon as they're done, and if it goes in our favor, we'll be back in Superior Court as quickly as we can get a date in Stamford.
And we're going to say a big prayer that the Connecticut Supreme judges are pragmatic and fair, as we've had the experience the whole way, which has been wonderful. And we are looking forward to the public support in this. We cannot do this without your help. We, went on a wing and a prayer when we filed this lawsuit, and we were depending on the public's help, and we still are. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we are going to need all the support that we can get, but we are going to see this to the finish line. We've been preparing for this since 3 years before the bill passed. We knew that we might end up on the doorsteps of the United States Supreme Court one day, and everything we did in the Connecticut State Legislature, every strategic initiative that we employed was all in preparation for ending up at the United States Supreme Court. And now we're at the Connecticut Supreme Court, and there's only one more step to go. So we definitely need your support. We are in the thick of it now. This is a hugely, that was horrible, I'm sorry. This is a very important step in the process.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say is we can't leave the financial burden for this to the parents of 4 and 5-year-olds in Connecticut. Connecticut's a relatively small state, 9 million people. We need the whole country to grab an oar. We need, no matter how old your kids are, no matter how safe you think your state is from having a religious exemption removed. Think about the people who are like-minded around other parts of the country, and by helping them, you do help yourself by deterring pharma from doing this in other places.
That's great. That's great. So is there anything else that you want to add? Is there any other questions that we need to ask? I'm looking in the chat right now. I think we've pretty much covered it all. We can't give away anything really strategic. I will post this link of this video and the ways to donate and all the places that we can as soon as this live has ended. And if anybody has questions, they can go to libertynowlaw.com.
Oh, you froze on me. Did we lose LeeAnn?
You there?
Yeah, you froze for a minute, but
oh, so sorry about that.
Yeah.
So if you go to libertylawnow.com, tonight we'll be posting an update in that group with a little bit about what we discussed this evening, as well as announcing the $40,000 matching donation offer by Children's Health Defense and all the ways that you can help support us. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you to our producer, Susie Olsen-Corrigan, who at the very last minute pulled her streaming access out and allowed us to use it because of technical difficulties. We're very grateful to you, Susie. Thank you so much. libertylawnow.org. It's not live yet. It'll be live tonight. I will post the update as soon as we get off this thing and I can go update the website. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please say a prayer for the Spillane family that they get justice, because then the rest of the state of Connecticut will get justice as well.
Excellent. Thank you, LeeAnn. Thank you, Susie.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Susie. Have a great night, everyone.